America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. This is Monday, July 20th. If any questions, come up to this microphone over here and tell us your address and what's on your mind. I want to thank everyone for practicing the distancing and the mask. We know it's not the most fun thing we've ever done, but thank you very much. Call the roll, please.
Cedar?
Here.
Ellery?
Here.
Kinsfater?
Here.
Koopa?
Here.
Laporte?
Here.
McCartney?
Here.
Watt is absent.
I'll make a motion to excuse Watt.
I'll support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
All right, number 4, consent agenda. A, City Council minutes of July 6, 2020, regular meeting recommendation, approve. B is the Golf Commission minutes of November 9th, 2019, regular meeting recommendation, receive. C is the Planning Commission minutes of December 11th, 2019, meeting recommendation, receive. D is the Cemetery Board of Commission minutes of March 3rd, 2020, meeting recommendation, receive. And the Harbor Commission minutes of November 19th, 2019, and June 16th, 2020, meetings recommendation, receive.
Motion to approve A through E is presented.
I just have one thing. On item B, that was not the Golf Commission meeting. That was the Harbor Commission meeting at the golf course.
On November 9th?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll update the minutes.
It was November 19th.
And 9th.
Noted.
So there was no November 19th Harbor Commission.
No, the November 9th meeting was the Harbor Commission at Pine Shores. Thank you, Kinsfater, for the correction.
All right, the motion may support with that correction. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go to number 5, ordinance resolution. A, ordinance introduction prohibiting the shooting of bows and arrows within the city limits. Chief, is this you or is this Warren?
I can start, Your Honor.
All right.
Council, before you is a ordinance which essentially is a update to existing regulations in effect in the city. We have a section of our city code that regulates the use and possession of firearms within the city limits. It's been in our code pretty much since its inception. And through the course of their regular duties, the St.Clair Police Department has taken several complaints about neighbors who are shooting bow and arrows on their property, in their backyard. And they're concerned, and when they called the police about it, the police investigated, and they found that there is no, local statute in our city code that allows them to take any sort of action. So essentially what this does is it closes a gap in the way we can enforce things in the city. And what it does is this, is it basically changes the word firearm to weapon. And it also, there's 7 different, sub-definitions of the word weapon. And essentially what this does is it doesn't prohibit the shooting of bow and arrows on property, rather it prohibits the negligent or reckless use or discharge of a weapon, which in this case would include bow and arrows. So again, it's the goal of the ordinance is if somebody is conducting this type of activities and it's in an unsafe manner or a reckless manner, the city police department has the authority to actually come in and take enforcement action. Otherwise, though, the argument can be made as long as somebody is doing such activities in a non-reckless manner, that is still allowed under the code. So that is what this ordinance does, and again, it's not adopted today, it's merely introduced.
How many, is this just one instance that this has arisen?
So far.
I just don't like the way the heading is, where it says it prohibits the shooting. I mean, it doesn't say, you got to actually read into the ordinance to get into the negligency and the recklessness, and I think.
The way I look at it first sight,
Yeah.
it means no, you
Yeah,
can't
and I
do
don't
it at
care
all.
for that.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Kinsfater, the ordinances, when they're codified, the title does not follow the ordinance, so the only thing that actually shows up in the code is the amendments themselves, so there won't be anything in the city code where the word prohibit, as you see it in the title of the ordinance, is there. That being said, if council wanted to introduce the ordinance with an amendment to that title, they would certainly be able to do so.
With this proposed ordinance, what happens if someone's shooting in their backyard at a target, misses the target, the arrow goes beyond their property line and hits a innocent bystander?
That's negligent.
Well, would it be
This ordinance
negligent?
isn't, this ordinance isn't gonna stop that.
Right, but then would that person be charged, or?
You're responsible for it.
I have a problem with the section 38.225, that it's just not bow and arrows, you're defining, you're listing possibly seven different,
More than seven.
what you call weapons.
Last one is in any such.
I couldn't support an ordinance like this if,
No.
put a gun to my head, pardon the pun. I mean, we would have had 2 or 3 complaints. So I've got an acre of ground and I'm target practicing. I got a neighbor that doesn't like bow and arrows, calls you, says I'm recklessly discharging my bow and arrow. Now the onus is on me to prove that I'm not.
I agree with you.
I do too.
Chief, do you want to weigh in on this, please?
The people that we're dealing with it wasn't your average hunter practicing in the backyard. It was a gentleman whose neighbor approached him, and then he since got upset with the neighbor that called the police on him, and he continually just fires his bow. You can kill a deer at 40 yards with a bow. There's not very many big yards with an acre or more in the city. So there are several that they practice before season, but we're a long way from season right now to be shooting a bow.
What's your recommendation?
I'd be happy with no weapons in the city, but,
All right.
you know, if we can do this, and negligence is if they miss the target. You know, most people, when I used to bow hunt, I had big bales of hay on a 10-foot privacy fence. and
Or
I
a
didn't
berm
know-
behind it?
Yeah.
All right.
If you're doing it in the backyard with a chain link fence, I'd say that's negligent, but. The word negligent, it does open up, and I wish Mr. Downey was here, because that is a can of worms, really. Who defines what negligence is?
Your Honor, perhaps we should refer it back to administration for rewriting of it. So we have a little different, so like you're saying, if they're not protecting property behind it, so something can't go through with them. I just don't like the word.
I think that provision would be good.
Did we base this on somebody else's, some other cities, or is this just?
In my conversations with Attorney Downey, he looked at a few different ordinances when figuring out the language to use here. And I will say that Attorney Downey did call me a few hours ago, and he's having some family matters to attend to this evening, which is why he couldn't be here. So if council wishes to postpone action at this time, or refer back to their questions, I think they will be within their right to do so.
Right. All right.
Make a motion to refer it back.
I would just make a motion to table it.
Table it?
Table it and see where it goes?
Well, I mean, here we're sitting here trying to legislate common sense. And if it was a bow and arrow and there's a couple incidences, and it is negligent, that's a law enforcement issue. I mean, I'm just trying to figure this whole thing out. It's open, it's way wide open to any weapon.
Well, that's why I think it should go to legal counsel and have them come back and more define it.
Did you make a motion?
Yes.
State your motion again, please.
To refer it back to administration and legal counsel to clean it up and bring it back to us.
All right, I'll support that motion. Any questions or comments? Yes, sir. Thank you, Chief. We might bring you back up, but maybe not.
Jeff Nagel, North Riverside, 1059. I may run out of breath, so pardon me. With respect to the chief, and he and I have had conversations, and I respect him a lot. But basically, nobody's going to want to hear this. We're dealing with the Second Amendment. It doesn't say firearms. It says arms. People target practicing, Second Amendment. I understand negligence, I understand accidents, I understand common sense and responsibility. When that isn't shown, I think, yeah, we're gonna have to take a look at it and possibly make some rules. But prohibiting, no. Words like that, no. No way.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else? All right, call the roll, and the motion is made to refer it back to administration.
Kinsfater,
No.
Kufa,
No.
Laporte,
Yes.
McCartney,
No.
Ellery,
Yes.
Cedar.
Yes. Is that 3-3?
It is.
That's a failed vote, so we'll not send it back to administration.
It dies.
It may come back at a different date, a different way, shape, or form, but if tonight, we're not going to take official action on it. So with that in mind, we'll move to 6. Ports Administration, Mr. Rothy?
Sure, and might I say, when I was putting my mask back on after taking a drink of water, it broke, so that is why I'm not wearing one right now.
Violation.
Oh, boy.
An ordinance against that.
Anyway, for the city superintendent report this evening, I have the following 3 items. Beginning Thursday of this week, the mill and fill of Vine Street from Kearney to approximately 9th Street is going to begin. Work weather permitting is anticipated to conclude on Friday. Thank you. And residents have already been notified, and looking forward to have that project completed. St. Clair Highway, Cass Street, and 3rd Street. We're looking at August for the construction start. We had a pre-construction meeting last week on those projects. The City of St. Clair census, I've talked about the importance of filling out the census the last few meetings. Our census response rate is just over 80% as a community, which is pretty good. It's higher than the state average. I encourage, if you haven't taken the census yet, or you know people who haven't, highly encourage them to take it. A lot of our funding, especially for roads, that's not our millage tax money, is all dependent on both the number of miles we have in town and the number of people we have in town. And the number of people we have in town is easier to increase than the number of miles. That being said, the other major announcement of the evening is regarding St. Clair Community Foundation. Earlier this morning, Mayor Suter, Therese Hawkins, and I, and a few members of our Trails Advisory Board attended an event in Port Huron for the official announcement of 2 grants. The St. Clair Community Foundation has secured a partnership with the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation, which is a major foundation in this country. And the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation has provided I think it was $1.5 million grant to the Community Foundation to use towards finishing the Bridge to Bay Trail. This is that outside funding source that was talked about regarding the Clinton Avenue bike path several months ago, that we can now officially say who the founder is, that third-party foundation partner is, and this is Ralph Wilson Jr. Foundation. So on that money, the city of St. Clair will be receiving $302,000 to put towards that project. Just about covers our local match. So the city of St. Clair Community Foundation has also committed about $100,000 of St. Clair funds to this as well, to fully cover our 40% local match for that project. At this point, MDOT still has not approved their portion, which obviously if that doesn't happen, the project will not be able to move forward. However, our application has been reviewed very favorably by MDOT so far. The second grant announced this morning, also Community Foundation, Ralph C. Wilson Foundation partnership, is a $10,000 grant for the city of St. Clair. It was a combination of several different communities put forth different dollar amounts. It's a matching grant, and it's all to be used for improvements to the existing bike path, a non-motorized pathway in the city limits. And this includes, it requires a match, but it can be done with in-kind services and repairs. So if you've noticed, DPW have been out doing some improvements already to the bike path. I knew this grant was coming. I wasn't able to announce it until this morning, but it's very exciting. We're going to be able to put forth a lot of funds to improve our bike path as it exists, in addition to the other sidewalk work that we've talked about, and we have a list of areas to address. So with that being said, that is my main announcements for this evening. I'd be happy to take any questions, should anybody have any.
Anything from Mr. Rothy tonight? All right. Mr. Downey's not here. Good luck with his situation. Any city departments? All right, D is authorities and boards and commissions. Anybody have anything? We have no unfinished business. Let's go to number 8, new business, approved right-of-way construction permit. Is that you, D?
Yes, before you, you have an application for a right-of-way construction permit for Mike Knobloch, 401 Fredmore Highway. This is his driveway. It comes onto Fort Street, which dead ends at the river. The right-of-way is 70 foot, and you'd have backside of curb would be 28 feet. They want to install retainer walls on both sides of the driveway, and you should have the pictures there. That shows it, and this will get the stone that's on the house, it would get stone on them, in between the concrete slab for the driveway. The one to the west is 2 foot behind the curb, the proposed curb, and the east one is 3 foot behind the curb. Talked to Mr. Burgess to the north of him, and he's fine with it. They did move them back somewhat. They just, according to the ordinance, they need to get permission to be in the right-of-way. There isn't any drains that go to the river there. There's no need to have a 70-foot wide right-of-way there anyhow, but it is there, and that's about it. So Tony Mills, the contractor, is here if you have any questions for him or if you have any questions for me.
Stay right there for a second. Any questions for D?
Dee, did the fire department look at this?
No, but actually what they're proposing is they're going to put curbing in on the other side. Well, you can verify that. And I know that Dave had told me they're talking about paving it at their own expense. The fire department, so they'll have a 28-foot road where there's no parking in the roadway itself. That should get posted. So I don't see an issue with it, to be honest with you. But you definitely don't need, I mean, you won't have any trouble getting down a 28-foot wide road. And you're going to have to back out anyhow because you're at the river.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion to approve the right-of-way request as presented.
Support.
All right, the motion is made. Support. Any questions?
Mr. Kinsler, do you think the fire department needs to look at it or no?
Well, I mean, if I don't know. I mean, I know they use that street end for the fuel dock for anything they have over there. I know that's one of their stations right there. I guess it'd be nice if they would have just talked to them and just make sure. I mean, I don't want to speak for the fire department, I'd rather have you, it's probably all right, but I don't know. A lot of times we set up for Riverfest and we put the stuff on the road and it's not enough room for them, so.
Could we make a motion to approve pending approval from the fire department?
Yeah, I think that I'd be good with that.
Yeah. You want to include it in your motion? You made the motion, didn't you, Tom?
I did.
You want to include that
Sure.
with approval of fire department? You still supporting?
Yes, sir.
All right, the motion is made and supported to approve the right-of-way construction permit with the okay of the fire department.
I would just ask, Your Honor, that they don't sit on this, they get down there right away, not to hold these guys up. What Dave Burgess and Mike Knobloch have done for that road, without any cost to the city of St. Clair, has been phenomenal. So for us to hinder this any longer, to me, is a shame. So with that being said,
It shouldn't take less than
Well, I
a day
would
to
hope
talk
they
to
would
the
be
fire
down there
department.
tomorrow,
That's
so.
something that should have been done ahead of time anyway.
All right, so the motion is still to approve with the approval of the fire department. Call the roll, please.
Kufa,
Yes.
Laporte,
Yes.
McCartney,
yes.
Ellery,
Yes.
Kinsfater,
Yes.
Cedar,
Yes.
carried, Your Honor.
All right, good luck, fellas. Okay, B, equipment pool discussion, Mr. Rothy.
Yes, so before we get into our street sweeper, just, speaking a lot about equipment, what we have, how old it is, what the repairs are, what this fund balance of the equipment pool fund is, where it's going. I put together a pretty brief little PowerPoint, if you will. It's just got about 8 slides. And all of council has a paper copy in front of them, and those who are here can follow along at the monitor if they will. And again, my purpose of this is just to give an overview of where we are with our fleet, where DPW and I would like to head, and just be a broad update before we have any deliberations on a street sweeper. So without further ado, the major equipment we have in our fleet that is aging is our 2 leaf vacs, 2003 and 2006 model. Since October 1st, 2017, they've needed about 26,600 in repairs, both routine and non-routine. We have a construction loader, model year 2003. It doesn't need engine repairs right this very second, but it's getting closer to that point. We also, our vac truck, which is one of our most important pieces of equipment, 1999, and again, it's older. We had a lot of repairs on that, $19,900 since October 1st, 2017. And in addition to those, we have 4 plow trucks, a 2001, 02, 06, and a 2015. So that's, that's a sizable portion of our fleet right there. And again, a lot of that is approaching 20 years old, if not already 20 years old. And the repair costs for older machines continue to rise. So now, how do we pay for and purchase, to maintain existing equipment and purchase new equipment? Well, we have what's called an equipment pool fund. Now, an equipment pool fund, for most pieces of equipment in the city, with a few exceptions, is the owner and purchaser of major equipment that's shared by department. For instance, if there's a water main break and the vac truck is needed to go fix that water main break, there's an hourly charge that the water fund pays into the equipment pool fund. And let's say that same vac truck that later on that day goes to clean out some sewer lines. Then the sewer fund would then pay the hourly rate for the hours it spends doing that kind of activity. Now this hourly rental rate, which is determined by MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, on an annual basis, is designed to cover insurance, fuel, maintenance, and most importantly, eventual replacement costs of the equipment. So now we do it this way so we always ensure we have funds on hand to both maintain equipment and eventually replace it. And the only sources of revenue in our equipment pool fund is equipment rentals. No tax dollars, no revenue sharing, no water bill payments or anything. It's purely funded by equipment rental revenue alone. And so on the next slide, you'll see a table of revenues and expenditures over the last few years. Important to note that expenditures include depreciation, which is a non-cash expense, which is why you can see an instance our expenditures on paper are exceeding revenues each year. Again, part of that expenditure is in the actual cash. So the cash balance of the fund has actually grown from $812,000 as of September 30th, 2016 to $979,000 as of September 30th, 2019. And again, so the equipment pool fund is functioning exactly how it's designed to. It's covering maintenance costs, and it's also building a significant amount of cash to fund or finance replacement of the equipment when it reaches the end of its lifespan. Now, many months ago, I talked about how we were going to start the process of purchasing a vac truck, as it is one of our oldest pieces of equipment, and it will be needed to be used a lot more in future years as we comply with a bunch of regulations on lead service line, and it's also a really invaluable piece of equipment to use for cleaning the sewers regularly on a regular basis. DPW would like to clean anywhere from 10 to 20% of our sewer system each year. I originally planned on bringing quotes and prices to you many months ago. DPW was going to do demos, and then COVID happened and nobody was doing demos anymore, so that delayed our timeline on bringing that vac truck purchase to you. But the last few weeks, DPW has been able to do those demos, and we're working with, getting the final quotes on those items. Now, that's kind of where we were at with the current fiscal year. In the fiscal year 2021, upcoming in October, I kind of set aside enough money in the budget to pay for an installment. So, you know, my goal, and I'll get to later with the vac truck, is not to pay cash for the whole thing at once, rather be financed it over a 6-year period of time. So I budgeted for the first year of that installment. I budgeted for the replacement of a new leaf vac, and I also budgeted for the replacement of the 2003 loader. Again, how those funds are ultimately spent is up to council, but the amount I set aside in the budget would likely allow us to meet that scenario. So that's kind of our plan for the future equipment of in the current and next year future. In addition to equipment replacement, we also have been talking about the need for adding to our fleet, adding equipment. One of those items that we talked about last week and we're talking about this week is street sweeper, of course. In addition to that, we've been doing a lot of televising of sewers to find defects, find breaks, and all of that work right now is done contracted out. So we're paying a contractor to come in with their equipment. We're paying thousands of dollars a time. Televising the North Riverside sewer cost us over $30,000 to do all that. Now, granted, that was a specialized job. The cost from given the location and the equipment needs, it's not normally nearly that expensive to televise. But again, in the long run, we think that might be a wise purchase for the city to consider, and we're actively researching that. Another just throwaway thing in there is we're also looking at valve turners, perhaps to exercise our valves. But again, that's just potential purchases in the future that we're talking about. Obviously, the more critical ones are replacing current equipment that is aging. So that being said, looking forward, so assuming council moves forward with the vac truck, one of the leaf vacs and the loader, in the years to follow the next fiscal year, so 2, 3, 4 years out, we're looking at replacing that second leaf vac, 1 or 2 of those plow trucks that are 01, 02, as well as the backhoe and the truck for the water plant. And again, that's 3, 4, 5 years out. So that's kind of where we're wanting to go with equipment replacement in future years. Now, lastly, how do we pay for it? Obviously, we have a significant size of cash balance in our equipment pool fund, and again, we have it because it's designed to, when equipment reaches the end of its life, 20 years, 15 years, 25 years, depending on the machine, the cash is there to pay for it. Now, given the vac truck, probably our most pressing need, is the most expensive item of everything we've just talked about. So one of the things that we can do is we're trying to preserve existing cash as much as possible. And essentially what we would do is we would, if council approved the purchase of a vac truck, I'd also seek council to approve by getting through competitive bids, essentially a 5 to 6 year installment purchase agreement, or a loan. And that's a common mechanism used by Michigan local governments to purchase equipment specifically. It's allowed under Public Act 99. And again, it's essentially we bid the truck, and we also bid the financing to ensure we get a favorable interest rate. So that's essentially how we want to move forward with DPW and address our aging fleet. Again, those maintenance costs are continuing to rise. The cash is there to start replacing some of these machines, and we really need to start looking what's the long-term plan for equipment fleet maintenance. And I think this is essentially the culmination of a lot of conversations I've had with Director Bob Deef about equipment. So before we got into discussions on the street sweeper, I just wanted to kind of put this information out here to make you aware of the direction we're heading in the department regarding fleet maintenance. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this specific topic before we move on to the next agenda item.
Have you received any, ballpark numbers for this vac truck?
About 400,000.
400?
Yeah, which is why I think a lot of communities, the vac truck's a 20-year machine. Ours is over 20 years old. A lot of communities will, put $50,000, $60,000 down in the first year, and then they will, and that doesn't count trading in the vac truck or, selling the current vac truck used. And then what they do is, they budget for an annual payment, anywhere from 50 to 60 grand a year, depending on the interest, for a period of 6 years. And that is my intention to do that is it allows us to preserve the cash we have better versus wiping out, half of that equipment funding cash. It's, the interest on these loans, again, especially in today's environment, you'll probably get a very attractive interest rate, especially if you do it by bidding the interest rate itself out.
Do you have an estimate on the replacement of the 2 plow trucks in the backhoe, those are both fairly expensive
Yeah,
vehicles.
I would say, again, and the plow trucks in particular, probably 3 years out, wouldn't you say, Bob, at least? If you did one of those, you can do it about 200 each one. Backhoe, less than 200, probably closer to 150. That's kind of the numbers we're using as we're mapping out the equipment pool funds, financial health over the next, 4 or 5 years, and again, we're considering that council's gonna move forward with the vac truck through the installment purchase versus paying in cash when we do all of this, because obviously, if the council decides to pay cash for the vac truck, we're not gonna have as many funds on hand to, replace the other equipment as it ages, and
Does the golf course use the equipment pool to purchase stuff?
the golf course funds, the equipment pool was used to purchase some of the mowers that were recently done, but otherwise, the equipment pool fund has very little to do with the golf course.
Okay, police cars, that's
Police cars, the last one I believe was purchased through the equipment pool fund. I disagree with that method, it's not very common. The police cruiser that we actually just received on Friday was purchased through the general fund, not the equipment pool fund.
Anything else from Mr. Brophy on this? All right, we'll move to C then. Purchase of street sweeper. Mr. Brophy.
All right, so we spoke about street sweeping operations at our last meeting. We talked about, current rental price we're paying, the need to sweep our streets. It's actually, I found out in the last 2 weeks, the city's stormwater permit actually requires regular sweeping of the city's streets, which, we do. We do enough to be compliant, but, there's a big push for preserving and protecting, the waters of the state by, ensuring the streets are clean, catch basins are clean, things like that. I had the opportunity to speak with several of our neighboring communities. All of them either do what we do, rent the machine annually from Bell Equipment, or they own their own machine. And in the city of Richmond's case, they purchased a used sweeper from Bell Equipment, which is what's on council's, what's being put forward and suggested to the council as our best option today. Furthermore, I know Director Beath, I got a quote from someone, I don't know what the company was, but it was we wanted to pay somebody to come in and sweep our streets. For us, it was $8,000 per job. And again, I don't know where that company was out of, but it doesn't seem like it's a local, it's not a widely used local option, essentially. But again, that being said, the model proposed is a 2016 sweeper. After applying the amount that the city has paid this year so far, the purchase price for a 2016 model would be $123,000. Again, council is free to do what they wish. We can continue to rent the sweeper on an annual basis. It's $3,000 per week when we rent it.
How much do we spend a year on that, roughly, on an average?
And this year we've had it 3 months, so that was $27,000. Last year we had it 1 month, $9,000. Before that, I wouldn't be able to comment on how often we rented it.
Why have we had it 3 months?
Bob, you want to answer that? Why 3 months this year?
Why do we have it for 3 months this year and a month last year?
Well, it should be 3.
Bob, you want to come up here, please?
No.
No, you don't want.
It should be a minimum of 3 times each year, but we just haven't spent the money on it. Last year, we only did it once. The year before, we did it twice. I've been approached by council, different members of council wanting it done more than twice. So
when we rent it for 3 months, do we keep it for 3 months?
we don't rent it for 3 months. We rent it for 3 weeks at a time for $9,000. And then you can send it back and then get it back and send it back and get it back. But the problem is if it's sitting there, we can do a lot better job, because if I have the time, I can send a guy out for a couple of days. He can spend a couple of days on it and then go do some other work.
and, you know, and then go back out. And again, when I have to schedule it, then I have to designate a person in that machine for the whole 3 weeks, because I'm not gonna pay that kind of money and then have it sit in the barn. Then you have to deal with rain, you know, rain days. It would just make it a much more efficient to keep the streets and the sewers clean if we owned our own.
What's the life expectancy for one of these machines?
I can't hear you.
The life expectancy for a machine?
There's no reason it won't run 15 to 20 years, just like all our stuff. We maintenance them properly, and
Yeah, for reference, Marine City Streetwear is at least 20 years old.
Yeah.
And then one last question, what's the, a new sweeper's price compared to the used?
$215 for a new
Oh,
one.
wow. Okay.
So are you prioritizing the sweeper over top the vac truck, or?
Well, they're both critical, really. That's a tough one, Mike. That's a tough one.
Well, you're
'cause-
getting by right now with renting it.
What's
I
that?
said we're getting by right now with your renting it, is that not correct? I mean, it would be easier if we bought one and you had it sitting in the barn.
Right,
But you're
right.
getting the job done.
We're getting the job done,
Is there
sure,
a
but
schedule?
it's
People are
pretty
asking me-
costly.
People are asking me, is there a schedule? Because a lot of times the street sweeper goes by and their cars are sitting out on the road, and that's not effective at all. You might as well not even do it.
I'm working on, schedule will be just like with the leaves.
Okay.
It'll be a rotation, just like the leaves are.
And then that 3 weeks in the month, that's how long it takes to do the city? Or how
Yes.
many times do you do the city in 3 weeks? Just once?
Yep.
Okay.
I try to get twice on the main roads, just because them are the ones people see the most. But in 3 weeks, we can do the whole city once and the main roads twice.
And while you're doing that, you do that for 8 hours a day for 3
Yes.
weeks?
Yep,
Wow.
yep. Mr. Melms he's the guy on the sweeper now.
Are you gonna have the staff to be able to run it?
Yeah, we're looking at replacing Fred, who just retired, and then another guy, hopefully in the fall, we'll be putting another fella on.
So you want to bring on 2 guys to replace Fred?
Yes, at least. And it still won't be enough.
So what's your intention, if you had it, you would be sweeping the streets once a month?
We'd be somewhere in the town once a month, yeah. The whole town, yeah, basically the whole town would get done once a
So
month.
every month you'd be
Just like
designating one guy
the
to,
leaves, yeah.
designating one guy to sweep streets three weeks out of the month?
Right, he'd be probably 2 or 3 days a week. Yeah, just like the chipper goes out 1 day a week.
All right.
You know, that would probably be 2 days a week.
All right, well, we might bring you back up, but thank you. Dee, did you want to add something to this?
I'm talking as a citizen now. Way back when I was a little boy, St. Clair had their own sweeper. It went out every Friday. Same guy ran it. Streets were clean. I realized that a lot of our streets aren't good, but we got a program going now, getting them fixed. You need a street sweeper sitting at the warehouse so that you have a little storm, boom, he could go. That sweeper has got to follow the leave machines in the fall, and they haven't been getting done in the fall. And I mean, I don't know whether any of you have looked at Clinton Avenue all winter long. It looked like hell. And I wasn't very proud of the city at that time. And I think the sweeper is more important than replacing the vac truck at this time. And I don't know whether or not that vac truck could get rebuilt and keep the chassis. It can't have a lot of miles on it. You know, it doesn't really go any places but in town.
It's used an awful lot.
What's that?
It's used an awful lot.
No, it's, the vac is used a lot, but the truck itself doesn't have all that many miles on it. Now, rather than spending, what was it, 200? 400, wasn't it? 400, check and see what it would cost to completely go through the vac system. it might be a lot of money, but I mean, that,
We've,
how
we've,
many miles is on that truck, Bob?
Dee, we've actually talked about that. I've talked about that with Warren, because we've done that with some of the fire
Yeah.
apparatus. We've just rebuilt some of the stuff because they're sitting there with
Yeah,
10,000
I mean,
miles on them.
you know, the vac truck will, if you have the sweeper, the vac
Right.
truck won't be needed quite as much, that's for sure. Won't have to work nearly.
But as far as, I mean, just a question, and I don't know, it's not fair to ask you, but you're talking about what happened on Clinton last year. Why didn't we rent a sweeper and go do Clinton Avenue?
Well,
I'm just
I
saying.
mean, I don't
understand
know,
if we would
I
have had
don't
it in the
know.
barn, but.
I don't
if-
know, probably it was manpower, but.
Yeah, so I
but,
mean, we got
you
a
know,
couple issues, not just a,
Well, I mean,
street
that's
sweeper.
something, yeah.
yeah, okay.
No, but I mean, you gotta have that
You
sweeper
can
now.
have all the equipment in the
Now,
world, but if you
like
got
with the
somebody
new
to run it.
streets, you can tell that they've been swept and they look nice, you know. And as far as going around cars, yeah, you know, it's kind of a pain in the butt, but, you know, on the way back, they might be able to catch it.
Right.
All right, thank you, Dee.
My own opinion.
Thank you. Where would you pay for this?
Equipment pool fund.
This would come out of the equipment pool
Yes.
fund, just cash pay?
Yes. The rentals is currently paid for out of the street funds. That isn't allowed expense on the street funds. So if council move forward with the purchase, we could reallocate the money spent annually on renting the street sweeper and putting that towards more road improvements.
Your Honor, I make a motion to purchase a street sweeper. I think it's time we start taking care of our roads. We tried to do this at the last millage. We wanted to get a road maintenance program going. Everybody on council except for 2 of us turned it down. We gotta maintain these roads. We're spending a ton of money every year on these roads and we're not maintaining them. We've gotta have this equipment to do it.
I'll support it.
All right, the motion's made, support. Any questions, comments? All right, call the roll, please.
Laporte,
Yes.
McCartney,
Yes.
Ellery,
Yes.
Kinsfater,
Yes.
Kufa,
Yes.
Cedar,
Yes.
carried, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, Bob. Well, number 9, claims of the council July 9th and July 16th, 2020.
Hearing no questions, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve both. as
Support.
presented.
Motion made, support. Any questions on claims and accounts? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have public comment and questions, 3 minutes limit, non-agenda items. Any non-agenda items? Yes, sir.
Bill Quinn, South 1374 South Riverside. I asked you last 2 meetings about the vote was taken after closed session. Can you enlighten us on what was ordered done?
We can't yet. We're supposed to hear something this week, and then maybe we can at the next meeting.
All right, and Warren, you mentioned sidewalks in your report. What are we doing on sidewalk repairs?
We have a list of sidewalks and we'll be starting those repairs when DPW has the ability to fit it in their schedule.
How much are we gonna spend on sidewalk repair this year?
I do not know that.
How much is budgeted for sidewalk repair this year?
We have a significant amount of funds in different departments in the major and local street fund budgets that can be tailored to and applied towards whatever the actual time and material cost of the sidewalk repairs. There is no set item in the budget that says sidewalks.
Just going out for bid to private contractors? Is the city gonna do this, or how's this gonna work?
We're
Because the
currently-
sidewalks are bad.
We're currently talking about having the projects conducted by DPW. That's not set in stone. I don't have any information on how exactly yet.
I'm just saying, they're getting bad. Not getting no better.
Anybody else? Public comments or questions? Mr. Bohm?
Just want to give you guys a little update what's going on with the all the activities that we have going on. Last week we had a meeting to address some of the different events that are happening countywide. Gary Fletcher, a couple of commissioners, Dr. Mercantant, the environmental health, and a few others to talk about some of the crowds and some of the issues. As you all know, under the governor's orders, there's a restriction to 100 people for an outdoor gathering. Okay. So some of the things that we've discussed is to limit the event space itself to 100 patrons. It would be set up for the first 100 people that came that would be able to sit in the event permitted area. As we well know, more people are going to show up at events. There's always people I wasn't even in town this week, and my wife said there was more people sitting on that boardwalk than she's probably seen in a lifetime. So naturally, just, with weather, things not happening. So what was discussed is if there's a permitted area for an event, and this will be specific to St. Clair, so there again, there's stuff going on countywide. But if you look at the park down there, for example, when the Vertons are doing some of their productions, to have a permitted event area to limit it to 100 people, free of charge, is the way that the event can happen. Now, as I told you, we well aware of that there's probably going to be more than 100 people, but you are not responsible for the people that are outside of that evented area. That's signed off from Gary Fletcher. I talked to Jim Downey about it. You can't have something and so all of a sudden we're responsible for the 500 people that are sitting in that park on a Saturday anyways, okay? If you jump across the street, and if we were talking about concerts to start off in the Plaza area, we may look to move, other parts of town at a later date. In the Plaza area, for example, so when you have your permitted event area that you have for up to 100 patrons, which is, like I said, per outdoor gathering guidelines, Drifters has capacity outdoors, Anchor Point's got capacity, Warwater's got capacity, right? So substantial capacity. So if there's a couple hundred people that are sitting outside in those areas and they're watching your concert that happens to be going on, you're not responsible for those other couple hundred people that happen to be sitting down in that particular area. And like there again, this has been reviewed by Gary. I've had lengthy conversations. I know I talked to Warren about it. Same thing with the health department. We know all eyes are going to be on us, okay? I guarantee you when we first start doing these things, people are calling the health department for all kinds of stuff. I mean, their phone is nonstop ringing on just all different things. And we need to make sure that we're held to the higher standard, that we're doing it, and that we're doing it right. So what's going to be proposed and what we're going to do, like I said, there's square footage. We're looking at 9 square foot per individual. So in a permitted area, if you were up to 100, you would fence off 9,000 square foot area. When I say fence off, I'm talking about some maybe using a rope area, nothing heavy, we're not going to do the city fencing. We may use that over in the courtyard, just depending. This is kind of an evolution to see, but I just wanted to come before you tonight to assure you that everything that we're doing is according to the guidelines at what can be done for these particular events. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you have something and more people show up and happen to be in town for a particular event, that's a good possibility too. So, going to open it up to any questions.
So the park could be fenced or not?
I'm sorry?
Your isolated area?
The isolated area, well, it may be roped. And we're not a proponent of fencing just because some of the limitations may be on site. If you want to plunk a chair down outside of that particular area, there again, we have a area that is designated for that particular event. We're not responsible for the patrons that are outside of that event area. That is I had Gary Fletcher look into that to make sure to understand what we can do and what we can't do, because I know you as city council members are going to get phone calls. I know the health department's going to get phone calls, those types of things. It's happening. It's happening in all kinds of stuff. I've been called on 5 times in my gym and haven't been open. Somebody called on me working out in my own gym one day. I said, I think I own the place. I would assume I could work out in my own place. That's just how that's the stuff that you're dealing with now, with people, and we understand it. So.
Anything else from Jeff? Thank you, Jeff.
And we'll see how how this evolves. I mean, hey, let's face it, if this thing goes back a phase and goes to phase 3 and you can't do things, then we'll have to pivot at the time. We do have a tremendous amount of programming for August and September. We've been extremely fortunate. We've been raising a lot of money. A lot of these events that have been canceled, the companies have diverted the monies from the allocations of some of these other things, and that's been helping us out, a lot of other people. So on a positive note, for going out 3 weeks before, we have raised substantial sums of money to be able to put these things on and to do a lot of stuff here in town. So,
Thank you.
okay.
All right, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Jeff Nagel, 159 North Riverside. Last meeting, I wasn't here, I watched it on Paul's thing. There was a lot of talk about drinks in the park and executive orders, a whole lot of talk. Chief wasn't here. And basically, you guys talked a lot and brainstormed a whole lot. And what I got out of the meeting was, okay, we're gonna take a look at it and see how it goes. And I'm just wondering if there's any feedback, are people drinking out there? How's it going?
I only talked to a few people, but so far the feedback to me has been positive. And I have not talked to everybody, obviously, but the people I have talked to, and I've been down to the park a couple different times just to see what's going on. I have not seen anything near a problem. Chief, have you?
Any issues this weekend?
Anybody else heard anything?
Good stuff, fingers crossed.
Anybody else, public comment? Okay, then let's move to number 11, mayor and council. Do we have anything up here, anybody? Am I forgetting anything on that?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No boat race this weekend.
no boat right this week. That's right. Way to go, Butch. Then I'll go to number 2 and ask for a closed session, request for closed session to discuss strategy connected with the negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement with employees represented by AFSCME.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
All right, the motion is made, supported. Have to roll call it, please.
McCartney?
Yes.
Ellery?
Yes.
Kinsfater?
Yes.
Koopa?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yeah.
Cedar?
Yes.
Carried, Your Honor.
All right. You are welcome to stay. We will not be taking any action when we come out of this closed session. If you're going to leave, be careful out there. Good luck with everybody.